everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Compton's Corner. I'm William Dakota Compton.
And I am Spencer Keck from Hardin County, Kentucky.
And we're both honored to be here with you today. This podcast is about bringing people together to talk honestly about what's going on and what's happening in Kentucky's 2nd Congressional District and all across America, to share the struggles and the victories of everyday families and to lay out a vision for a future that works for all of us. I wanted to start this podcast because politics too often feels distant, like something that happens in Washington, but not here at home. But in Kentucky, we know that community begins on the corner. It's where neighbors meet, where we swap stories, and where we find common ground. That's what I want this space to be. Today, in this opening episode, we're going to be sharing with you who we are, why we're running for Congress for me and for magistrate for Spencer, and the issues that matter most to our campaigns. So let's get started. So, who we are. Spencer, do you want to start first?
Sure thing. Well, I am a Kentucky born and bred man living out here, like I said, in Hardin County. Actually, right now I'm sitting in the AMP at Logstill waiting for a concert to start. But that's why I'm in the vehicle. But I have a passion for Kentucky just like William does. And we really want to see our Kentucky voices and our Kentucky stories come to the forefront. We talk about regular, honest, hardworking Kentuckians.
All right. Anything else you want to say about your background to let people know?
Yeah. So today happens to be a pretty serious day for me. This is the day that my brother, that's younger than me, all my siblings are, I'm the oldest, he lost his leg and hand in Afghanistan while serving as a combat medic in the U.S. Army. He had previously been in the Marine Corps and then went to college at Morehead State University on a GI Bill, where he got a degree in social work. And he was a social worker for about 3 years, continuing our family's heritage of service. And when President Bush came into office, he cut funding for states programs that, help out abused kids, which is our passion. And so when he lost his state job, he came to live with me. I was stationed out in California. And then he joined the Army just in time to head off to be a combat medic. And like I said, he lost his leg and hand in combat in Afghanistan, where I had served. I was on deployment with the Marines on September 11th when the attack happened. So I was the first hospital corpsman into Pakistan and then Afghanistan with the Marine Corps. So I've got some combat experience under my belt. Before that, I've been in the first Persian Gulf War. And I've just been all around the world serving my country. And now I am a public school teacher, just like yourself there, William.
Awesome. And again, thank you for being on here too.
It's a pleasure.
Like Spencer, I am a Kentucky native born in Warren County, Greenview Regional Hospital. I have grown up in this area my entire life, all 31 years. I went to public school in the Warren County public school system, proud product of our public schools. And I attended our local university, Western Kentucky University. Go Tops. Got to support our Hilltoppers, where I got my degree in teaching music education. And now I'm back at the same school that I was a student at, Warren East, teaching. I've entered my first decade of teaching this school year. It doesn't feel like it's been a decade. It is flown fast. But I have entered that first year, or first decade of teaching. And it has been just so amazing entering there and serving my community as a teacher and helping the young minds grow. Along with that, I have moved into one of our small unincorporated cities called Plum Springs in Warren County. So we have 4 unincorporated cities along with the main city, Bowling Green. And our second biggest is Plum Springs in Warren County. And I moved out there in 2019, just in time for me to get in a house before COVID hit and locked us all down. And went through COVID and decided, what we're seeing is not right. So I jumped in to the local government here in Plum Springs, where I became a city commissioner as a write-in candidate in there, and I'm now entering my third term. Is that, and then I wear many hats, and then on top of that, I back in February became the chairman of Kentucky's Democratic Rural Council for the entire state, where I focus on bringing Democrats into the Democratic Party in rural Kentucky, find Democrats to run on all levels, because we had so many unopposed seats last few cycles.
And you brought me in on that too, right, William?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yes, sir. So that's where I've decided to run for District 3 as a magistrate in Hardin County, and we've been working in that rural council together.
Yes, and we're in providing resources for candidates and just helping get them over the finish line, because we want to break the supermajority in our state house. We want to get Democratic candidates on our local levels elected, and of course our Democrats into Washington to help bring some normality back to our government, because we've
Absolutely.
seen shift. So that's currently where I am at right now. That's a little bit about myself. I love serving my community. I love helping my neighbors and friends out all the time. And it's just politics right now. That's just where we need to be, helping our friends and neighbors.
Well, William, talk about serving your community. That's what I've, decided. I remember at a young age that I was going to be my thing. I wanted to serve the community. I grew up with a mom who, even though she didn't start off in the evangelical fundamentalistic mindset, she went into that. So I thought for a bit I was going to be a missionary, but then I realized that serving people didn't just have to be that. I went in the military, saw around the world that we really did have and do have a wonderful nation. But I'm worried now that we're losing that nation that I knew when I joined in 1990 and that I grew up with in the 70s, 80s and 90s, because what I knew of Kentucky was a state that was full of empathy. One of my fondest memories was about the age of 3 or 4. I walked down stairs in my grandparents' basement in Eastern Kentucky, and I wandered into my papa's clinic. That's what he happened to have in his basement. And he built the house just for that. And I walked in to see what he's doing, and there I see this man with his ankle gashed open down to the bone. And I stood there in fascination, not horror, with fascination. Like, wow, what's this? I'd never seen ligaments before, or bones. And the guy looks up and sees me before my papa did, and he goes, "Hey, Doc, who's this young feller?" And my papa looked up. He's like, "Oh, that's my oldest grandson." I think he might have said favorite, but don't tell my cousins that. And I was the oldest anyway. So like, yeah. And so the man's like, "Hey, young'un, are you going to be a doctor like your papa here? He's been taking care of us for ages now and delivered most of the babies in 5 counties around. And and he's going to patch this up. Won't you watch?" So I did. I sat there and watched my grandfather sew up this tobacco farmer who had laid that ankle open with one of those tobacco knives. And I was hooked. I realized service was it, and that's what that was the trajectory of my life headed on. So even though I didn't get to replace him as a doctor there in Morgan County, Kentucky, like he wanted, I did go into the Navy and was part of Navy medicine. So I patch people up around the world, in combat, out of combat, Marines, sailors, Army, Air Force, you name it. And after 20 some years of globetrotting as a member of the military, did a little stint in the VA in Montana, I realized, what? I want to serve even, more deeply. And I want to serve the folks that my grandfather, actually both of my grandfathers, loved serving. Because my other grandfather was a judge actually a circuit judge in Eastern Kentucky. So he served Elliott County, Morgan County, and another county nearby there, Carter County. Um, and he had, before that, he had been a lawyer, and he actually was the judge advocate general lawyer that was in Japan for MacArthur to help draft up the surrender of the Japanese. And then he went over to the Missouri, took the papers, and signed them right there, with MacArthur and the Japanese. So that heritage means a lot to me. Later, he was the commissioner of Kentucky Highways in the 50s. So just that self-sacrifice and service has been a big part of my heritage. And I want to get back to that empathy that I learned from my grandfather, the doctor. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet the other grandfather. He passed right before I was born. And I'm sure that you have similar histories. Our families have been here for a while, loving this wonderful state.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I know that my family has served our community both in as carpenters and then just workers all across the community. And I mean, I first knew I was wanting to be in service.
Oh, wait, William. William,
Oh,
are you telling me that you're not a trust fund baby?
I'm not a trust fund baby.
What? My gosh.
No, not at all.
Me either. Once my mom went on that religious rut there for years, I can remember diving in dumpsters. We were living in Montana to get food out of the Safeway dumpster. It's went from seeing what it was like living in Shangri-La, the little bit of time we lived with my papa, the doctor, to living worse than hand to mouth. A lot of times not having anything for our hand to put in our mouth. So I think that working class that you're talking about, man, people don't know the struggle.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
At least not in DC. The rest of us know the struggle, but DC doesn't, and
Oh,
Frankfurt forgets it.
oh,
These days.
they have no idea what it's like
No.
to live paycheck to paycheck right now. I would remember growing up, and my father, he was self-employed. He was a parking lot cleaner and landscaper, and that was where I learned most of my work ethic from. Because as soon as
Absolutely.
old enough to go out and work with him, every break we had from school, we were cleaning those parking lots, or we were in the summer mowing the hills he didn't want to mow. there's
Oh
one, in,
man.
there's one in
Yeah.
Glasgow that I'll tell you that hill is like this, and as soon as summer hit and I had no school, that's one I was mowing because he didn't want to. Really,
So you're
Dad?
telling me earlier today about working in McDonald's and end up being
Yeah,
a manager to work your way through college. Now I see how that the greasy, hot, nasty job in the kitchen must have been a relief on that one out there, right? And
yes. Sometimes I mean there. So when I worked at McDonald's, going through school and college, there were lots of times that it was a reprieve from being outside mowing, but during the summer, and times where the AC went out in the building, and so our grill area would get 120 and
oh
like
yeah.
around that, and it was insane. But thankfully, even though we were working, we had amazing managers when I was back there. And if it happened when I was a manager, we would make sure everyone was drinking plenty of water. We would always take care of them. So I was fortunate that I didn't have someone going, you have to work no matter what, and you can't stop. But it was, and we would tell customers, hey, our AC's not working. They're taking a break to get water type thing.
Absolutely.
But I know I got into it when helping our community when I went through our band program at my high school. Um, I remember growing up, I had a lot of family issues that were very personal issues, and band was my kind of safe haven from that. I was able to be there with friends, learn music, throw out my emotions into the world, and just get rid of any negativity in a positive manner. And I remember when I got into high school, around my junior year, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I was like, well, if I wasn't in this band program, by all intents and purposes, I would probably, like many family members I've had prior, many friends I've had prior, probably be in a ditch somewhere on all kinds of drugs, all strung out on something. It's like, and the band program saved my life through everything I was going through.
That
And
reminds me of that Johnny Cash song, "I'd Never Pick Cotton," when he said he actually did, and he didn't like it.
yeah,
The
and
music saved him too.
I remember that and going, I don't want any future student to ever feel like they didn't have a place to go. And that propelled me into music education, which propelled me into service to our communities. Because when you become a teacher, you know that once you become a teacher, you're serving your community in any way possible. Whether it's kind of,
Absolutely.
in my case, it's whether it's going out to games to provide music for games, or during COVID, we would go out and we would make sure our students had what they needed to survive COVID. And that was a real big eye opening situation.
Now, William, um, was it a shock to you when you saw how many kids in America still, if they don't have those um, free school lunches, they'll actually starve at home, like I was when I was a kid?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a shock. Um, I was fortunate enough that my family qualified for the free and reduced lunch when I got about into sixth grade. Before then, we had to pay for school lunch, and there were honestly days that I didn't eat school lunch because I didn't have enough money to eat. But I was young enough that it didn't bother me too much back then. Uh, but I would see my fellow classmates not eating lunch. Go, why aren't you eating lunch? I don't have money. It's like, well, here, take
Yeah,
some of my stuff. And but once we pulled that lever and in my school district have the free lunch, it just boggles my mind now to see students not being able to, or people wanting to make sure they're not able to get that food for free. Because
yes.
at the very,
How can you want to make a baby starve?
yeah,
That just blows me away. Just you think that they don't deserve to live because they didn't have that, trust fund that you and I are missing too. You know?
and you would think out of the entire population, the two groups of people that you would think we would want to help more than anybody else are elderly and our children.
Yes,
And it seems like
absolutely.
that group of people, we're seeing people attacking more now than ever.
Now, I don't know, William, if you ever heard this one, but I heard somebody say one time that suffer the kids, the children to come unto me, and if you would harm them, then you should have that weight from a mill, back when they used to have those big stones that would grind the grain. And so that should be hung around your neck and throw you into the ocean if you would harm a kid and not allow them to come unto him. You
I've
know,
not heard
remember
that.
that? Yeah, I was right there. Well, see, we used to read the King James Bible. It's probably had a better translation, but yeah, that was one. That was those letters in red, though, William. That's what I remember. Yeah,
Yeah. So
the guy who said it, they put it in red for some reason. Yeah,
I wonder why.
yeah. Maybe that's to be central to the
Yeah.
to the teachings.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing. In my classroom, once I heard this talk about putting the Ten Commandments in the classroom, I'm like, huh. I don't think any of my starving kids are really worried about coveting their neighbor's wife. I'm not sure if they're going to understand that in the sixth grade, what that means. Hopefully not. But I sure do think that the Beatitudes have a lot of stuff in there, which is, take care of the widows and orphans. That was the major commandment from that guy that wrote stuff in red. Let's remember that's all in red. So I decided to put that in my classroom. If I'm saying if anything's going to be put in there, it's going to be the Beatitudes. So that's what I got hanging. A lot more relevant to these
Yeah.
poor,
Well,
struggling kids.
and then you open up the one that you mentioned about coveting your neighbor's wife. You open up the fact that you have to tell the kid, what does it mean to covet someone's neighbor's wife? And it's just a
Right.
whole can of worms that you're like, oh gosh, sixth graders don't need to know about this.
Third graders definitely don't need to, and kindergartners, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
unless
So
they wonder that's why Daddy's been, coming home late at night and or Mama's been hanging out with the milkman. I don't know, but
it's just
but I still don't think they need to necessarily, have to have explanation of that.
exactly.
I just really think that we have gotten far off track. All we ever heard were stories from Jesus about feeding the poor. The main thing being taking care of those widows, orphans, the impoverished, and blessed are the meek. I don't see that mandatorily posted on someone's wall. Blessed are the meek, for theirs will be the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. So we've kind of touched on this one a little bit, but why are we running for the office we're running for? And I'll let you go with running for magistrate. I think you kind of hit on that earlier, but just want to make sure everyone knows why we're running for these offices.
yeah. Well, I mean, um, again, both of the grandfathers were very serious about their service to the community as Democrats. They believed that that was the party that cared for the folks who'd been dirt poor like them during the Depression when no one else cared. There weren't any food pantries to go to. The hillbilly churches that my great grandfather preached at, they didn't have food just to pass out, and to make fun of people if they needed it. You know, Neighbors tried to help neighbors, but man, there wasn't stuff coming in. So they really, talked to me about that as being extremely important and what it meant when Franklin Delano Roosevelt, developed the work projects program and brought in the first library, to that eastern Kentucky county that they lived in Morgan County, with the WPA work project. And then, my other grandfather originally started off in southern Indiana. At a young age, he moved to Louisville, and so he went to U of L. Well, what later became U of L Law School was actually a night school, so he worked his way through college from a bank he was working in. But I think that service to our community and that passion for love in our community has got to be something that's called back to to our hearts. I just don't see it today in many of the people that believe that Jesus would have an R by his name. You know, I know I saw my grandfather when he wasn't working, literally a 12-hour day, 7 days a week, um, in his clinic, going on house calls, getting calls, at midnight, someone's sick, and he'd drive out there to take care of them. He was out campaigning for things like the first free immunizations program in Eastern Kentucky, so kids weren't dying anymore from all these diseases that plagued the area. He was out campaigning with Burt Combs to get parkways built. He and Burt Combs, the Governor Combs, were very good friends, and both from Eastern Kentucky, and knew what it meant to grow up poor, and didn't forget, because they reached a little higher status in the community. They didn't forget where they come from. They didn't forget the people that were just as important as them, who worked honest jobs for not much money. And that's what I now am finding on the military. I really knew I was serving my nation. I felt a lot of camaraderie. It wasn't until I became a school teacher that I really realized I was really serving again. And went from teaching in Hardin County, moved over to Jefferson County Public Schools, and and I chose to go to one of the most disadvantaged schools in the county. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in. And I have not had as much camaraderie um, since I was in the military. And I retired in 2014 from the military. Like I say, worked for the VA, and then worked for immigration, then back to the VA. And then 2021 decided, hey, after COVID, like you're talking about, what you saw happen to the kids being hungry and such. I had been homeschooled from the seventh grade onward. My mom got into that real religious rut. It also allowed my stepdad to abuse us more. Just I'm a survivor of child abuse. Like I said, that's why my brother went to social work. Well, I noticed during COVID that, man, I'd always swore I never would homeschool my kids, and there it was, trying to homeschool them between working for the federal government, coming home in the evenings. Did you do your work on your Chromebook, or and realized, man, I could teach them English language arts. I could teach them health sciences, because that was my degree was in health sciences, and I could teach them social studies, but I wasn't prepared anymore for the math that they needed to know. And I really knew that teachers were getting a bum rap, and I was disheartened to see that one party had decided that we were the public enemy number one. All these lies about DEI, which none of us have a clue what that. Well, once I finally took my graduate studies at Bellarmine University in Louisville, yeah, I had one, they talked about a little part of a semester, but it's not something that we teach, as you know, well, no, you don't have time to talk about DEI or, I do talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion because that means a lot to me that I include all my students. But CRT, they just make up these things
Yeah.
to sound evil when there's nothing, that we teach. You and I don't have any time for critical race theory. I mean, if you studied, okay, I can understand, the theory behind it, but we don't apply that to sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders, right? Does it apply to your music classes?
Not at all.
So that's what I'm like, what I had heard back in the 90s when Bill Clinton was president, and he and Hillary came up with this program because they had talked to veterans and active duty folks, and they found out, when these veterans were getting out of the military, they had all this training, education, qualifications, but they couldn't find good quality jobs that that translated from their military experience over to the civilian sector. So they decided, hey, let's make this troops to teachers program. And I'm like, in the 90s, I'm like, you know what? If I do a whole career in the military and I get my degree while I'm in the military, which I did, I got my undergraduate while I was in the military. I'm like, I'm going to be sure and one day get out and do that, And 2021, that was it. And I say COVID made me decide, you know what, I really need to put my money where my mouth is because I believe in public education. And I haven't looked back since. I've just, man, yes, it's tough, but boy, it beats being shot at in Afghanistan or the other combat zones I've been in. Any day I have a bad day, and there's those days. I'm sure you have them too, right? Tough days with some kids that are going through tough stuff. I just remind myself, hey, I'm not in the sand. No one's shooting at me. And we got metal detectors in my school, so I don't got to worry. I'm just, do the work of empathy and love, So there we go.
But yeah, I got into my race because of my students. Like I mentioned earlier, I was a student at the school I teach at and graduated from there in 2012, and I started back teaching fall of 2016. And ooh, what a year that was! Having to start teaching. Man.
Oh man. Were they
Started,
still using paper and pencil to do all their assignments?
we were still using paper and pencil then. But the beauty of what I get to do is I get to see my students from 5th grade through 12th grade. And so they already overshare with their teachers sometimes some of the things we don't want to hear, but they get to feel a little bit more safe and comfortable in my classroom because they have me since 5th grade. And over time, kids would come in and I would see them kind of like dragging their feet. And up until about 2 years ago, I would have the high school kids first period every day. And if you see high school kids, and most of the time they're like zombies anyway in the morning, but they would come in slower than normal. I'll go, what's wrong? Oh, I didn't get any sleep last night. Why didn't you? Well, I had to take care of my younger brother, sister. Or, well, I had to work till 11, 12 o'clock at night. Why are you doing that? I have to help mom and dad make ends meet. And if I don't go to work that late, then we can't afford to live in the house we're living in. And then seeing their grades start slipping and many other issues, most of which, as you know, as a teacher, we can't even tell others out loud because of certain confidential things that we have to go through to be teachers. Seeing those.
So, William, are you telling me that those kids are taking an immigrant's job?
Darn right, they're taking them. But seeing what these kids are facing, there are many of these kids in my community, the community I grew up in, that are facing issues that grown adults shouldn't even have to go through. And
and I wondered earlier today, you and I were talking, and we're talking about some of those stories. As an abused kid, I really want kids to be able to get what I missed out on. And one of that is a real childhood, and I started off teaching high school. I told you today, I had a student who was telling me that she was basically, her mom had pimped her out to this man, and it blew me away. She wrote that in her journals. I turned it in. It took, as I was telling you, a lot of work to get CPS to actually get involved. It took 3 iterations of writing. Um, and that's just, that's one of the triumphs that you'll never, ever be able to do anywhere else. I mean, maybe if I was a social worker, but hey, how do they actually get to those social workers? And I really love the fact that this girl, later she came back the next year because she was gone for the rest of that year. And I had her sibling in my class. She's like, "Thank you so much, Mr. Keck. You saved us. If it wasn't for you." And you now got my brother in here, and she had gotten the help she needed. And man, I'm sure you have some similar stories. You've been doing this longer than me now.
Oh yeah, uh, many similar stories, but uh,
We're not the groomers that they want to say that we are either. That's what really pisses me off too. That it enrages me because we're the ones who are keeping kids from being groomed.
yeah,
We're the ones they come to when they're actually someone at home or a neighbor or someone. It's always actually someone that you really know. You and I know that statistically.
yeah,
We're out. It's yeah.
oh yeah,
And I
and
say, yeah.
and I will say this too. Really angers me the fact that they keep saying that we're indoctrinating the kids, trying to make them believe in what we believe in and to do what we no. If I was going to indoctrinate those kids, they'd get all their work done on time. They'd be practicing their
Exactly.
music on time, or every
That's all
single
I'm
day.
trying to do is teach them, hey, this
But
is something, my mama told me when I was young, what you put in your mind, they can't take away from you. That's all the indoctrination I want. I want them to be free in their mind and strong. Use that intellect that, God gave them and that I know they can do. That's it. I want them to excel. I want them to be either to be the best, teacher also, doctor, lawyer, or pipe fitter or plumber, Ford worker. In my county, we've now got amazing opportunity come in with a Blue Oval to make the
yes,
batteries for Ford's vehicles. Be good paying jobs. Well, I want someone who is intelligent, hardworking, and that's what we're indoctrinating them in: ethics, work ethics. Empathy. I'm sorry, that's a good word for me. I think you want your fellow employees to have empathy for you. And you to have that for them. And
yeah,
your company thrives if it does have that. So yeah.
exactly. But no, seeing what these kids go through, I keep thinking to myself, what kind of world are they going into? What
Or yeah, what are we
and
creating for them?
yes, and I don't have any children myself, so they're my children. I want them
Absolutely.
to have better than I had when I was leaving that school, and
That's
that's
it.
what propelled me into this office, into this race, because my current representative, Greg Guthrie, he's been there since 2009. I was a freshman in high school.
Our current representative, because he
Yes,
represents
yeah,
right Hardin County too. Yeah.
but
Yep.
he's been there since 2009, and things are just getting worse and worse for our students, worse and worse for our communities. But he sure is helping pad the line for his corporate donors.
Yeah, he's got a trust fund, I'm sure, set up, right,
Yeah,
buddy?
yeah, exactly. And so it just,
Yeah. And one of the things that upsets me there, William, is, and we talked about this earlier today. My brother got some amazing treatment at Walter Reed Hospital in D.C. And Guthrie, if he just served 2 years, he gets that for life. If he only did one term, we know he's done more than that. But if he had only had one term, he would be able to he would have medical care and does have medical care for life, as do all these politicians who go to DC. They have full access to the same medical care that I love, from the military medical care there in DC and anywhere else now after that. Why don't the other Americans, that do work hard every day, live by the sweat of their brow, whether it's working at McDonald's by the sweat of their brow, sweaty, tough job, or working the way your dad did it, or working the way my dad did when he came back from Vietnam and, became a pipe fitter, after not completing college at Morehead State. So, it's every single one of us shouldn't have to live under the fear of, oh, what's the next illness that's going to ruin my life and therefore my family's life? My kids, am I going to have to watch them die from, juvenile diabetes or cancer, because
Yeah.
I can't, if you can't pay for that insulin, man. But yeah,
No, yeah, you're definitely right. We shouldn't have to worry about that. We shouldn't have to. It it boggled my mind just out of college. I would have friends of mine who had graduated with me about a year or two afterwards. I'd be talking to them, and all of a sudden they would kind of wince. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Well, this hurts back here. Why don't you go to the doctor? I can't afford it.
yeah.
What? Well, what if that's serious and it could be life threatening? Well, I guess it's life threatening. We'll just deal with it. What?
And
All
that,
because
that,
you can't afford it. And that should never happen here. Never
no,
happen.
and that reminds me of, my grandfather, when I go on house calls with him, a lot of times, he wouldn't charge the patients. He'd be like, hey, he knew, just like Hippocrates said, you should know your patients, have a sliding scale for them. Well, doctors aren't doing that in America. My grandfather's probably the last one to do that, but he did. I knew plenty of, the poor farmers be like, hey doc, how much? And he'd be like, hey, let my grandsons come fishing with me on your farm pond. Little little puddles we catch great fish in. That was the payment. I met people my age when I'd visit. You're like, oh my gosh, your papa charged $5 for a sports physical because he believed in fitness and sports. Kids having something to do besides chewing tobacco, in Eastern Kentucky and drinking moonshine. Like, let's get them something positive. And he was always working towards that. He got into Kiwanis and got the first in-ground swimming pool and first tennis courts in Eastern Kentucky. Again, it was back to that community service. He could have just gone home and watched TV for a couple hours at night, but no, he wouldn't do that. It was, what more can I do for my community after I've healed them all day long?
Yeah. And I attended a rally in Louisville regarding Medicaid, where many of the Louisville former mayors, and of course the most notable one was Harvey Slump, Dr. Harvey Slump. I don't know if
That's
you.
where I met you. Wasn't that where I met you?
No,
I know
this
we were
was
at a Medicaid rally once and
uh,
at the UAW hall there in
the
Louisville.
one
Was
in
that the
the
same one?
yeah, the one at the UAW hall is where I met you, but this one was about a month ago. That was at the
Ah,
in a park out there,
oh man. Oh, I wish I had gone to that one because my grandfather knew Dr. Sloan. I'd love to
and
reminisce about him.
he made the point that, and this is a good kind of jumping off point here, but
Yeah.
he made the point that he was around when John F. Kennedy was running for president, became president, and he said the quote that everyone likes to remember him by: "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And he said, we have gotten away from that mentality and we've flipped it backwards.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that's why I'm running for this, because I'm not running for this seat for my own health benefits. I'm running to help our country move forward. And we
Yes.
need to get back to that mindset. That's not what our country
Yes.
can do for you, but what you can do for our country. And that's the model
Absolutely.
I'm by.
And you know what? One last thing before we do hop off, William, you reminded me. Like I said, my grandpa was always campaigning for folks to have a better life, whether pushing for the town hall, to pave roads on roads that weren't paved for farmers that would get stuck when there'd be floods or rains. But something that lasted with me, because at that time, when he was telling me the story, Morgan County was all Democrat. You didn't get elected if you weren't a Democrat. But he knew this one long road, about 10 miles long or more, that was completely dirt and mud when it rained, and people couldn't get in and out. And it had always been that way because they always voted Republican. And he made sure, even though he was a diehard Democrat, you know, his joke would be, if we're having a good time fishing, oh, the fish know it's a Democrat day. That's how much of a Democrat he was. But he made sure that that road got paved, that had asphalt on it, that those farmers didn't have to suffer because they were of a different party than his and they disagreed with his political views. Now, that's the America and the Kentucky that I want to get back to. That's empathy. That's
Yeah.
not a bad word. That's not evil. That's beautiful.
Exactly. I agree. I agree. So this is this is who we are and why we're running for our office. Again, Spencer running for magistrate in which district in Hardin County?
District 3. And so from a hilltopper to a hillbilly, let's take Kentucky back. You know, they said that they were going to do it from the dog catcher to the city council to the magistrates to the state house to the national, government. Well, it's time for us to do it now. You know, it was their 50-year plan, and I hope it's not too late because I love Kentucky. I know you do. I've lived all over the United States. From the time my mom moved us around a bit until I got to come back. I've seen this whole nation. I love the whole nation. But I want Hardin County to be strong and be great. And I know you have that vision for this whole,
The
district.
whole district, yes. Even our rural areas. Even our rural areas.
Well, especially, we've forgotten. I mean, I love our cities. We got some great cities here: Louisville, Bowling Green, Lexington. You go on the list, Owensboro. But we really have some great rural folks, hardworking folks that this rural areas, and they feel neglected. And that feeling of neglect has led us to where we are. Because I know that down most of their hearts, they're not these cruel people who don't believe in empathy. That's
Exactly.
not that's not the Kentucky I know.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's a little bit about us for everyone. We're going to be back, at least with myself, I'll be here every week talking about some issues that we're facing across the district. And I know, Spencer, you mentioned that you're wanting to do uh, more day to day.
Yeah, I'd like to really make it a daily thing, just a small
Yeah.
chat by the fireside. Although my fire might be, an electronic one, but
So,
my grandparents always talked, like we said today, about those fireside chats with FDR. Well,
yeah,
let us know, and we'd like to hear what you have to say. What you feel is really important for our wonderful state, our wonderful nation.
yes.
Um, I'm interested in what you have to say about Hardin County, about all of Kentucky, and see what we can do. To really bring back that Kentucky that I'm still nostalgic for. And I was surprised to find that there's chinks in that picture I have, but I still have that picture in my mind.
Yeah. So, uh, like Spencer said, we want to hear from you all. Please, when we live stream these, please come in. Please ask us questions. If you see this and it's already happened, still send us questions. We'll see the comments, we'll see the questions, and we'll answer them on the next one that we're at. Because ultimately,
Absolutely,
we want to answer your questions because we want to hear from you, and that's something we don't see
absolutely,
often.
that's
So
right.
that's my alarm system telling me my front door is open.
All
but
right.
but
And
next
I
week's
think this
episode,
wonderful concert's about to start out here too, William.
yeah, yeah,
April Wine and Molly Hatchet.
so
Yeah,
cool.
looking forward.
Yeah, so I won't keep you much longer, but next week's episode, we're going to tackle healthcare, which is a big issue that everybody is talking about here lately, and especially with the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill or HR 1. We're going to tackle that issue, and we're going to talk about our futures of what we see as a magistrate and as a future congressman, what we're going to do to fix those issues.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining us. Great first episode of Compton's Corner, and I look forward to seeing more and more of them.
All righty. Let's do it.
All right. And y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.